I decided to be above all of that, you know, because I heard it from when I was younger. You know, my mom married my stepdad, and I have no idea why, but nobody, it was like, I was a secret because I was the white one. I was the secret, you know. My stepdad is Black, and my mom being Puerto Rican, everyone is like, my mom wanted everyone to believe my stepfather was my biological father.
Right.
And, you know, so then I became the center of being disliked because what they called me was light skin with pretty hair. I was just Puerto Rican. I didn't know any different. And that's how I wanted to raise my kids. I did it. And I told my kids, you accept everyone and anyone. It doesn't matter who they are. If you have a personal preference, that is absolutely your entitlement. We are all entitled to it. But if you have a personal preference, don't put yourself in a situation where that will anger you because you don't like it. Yeah. So I taught my girls to do that. I taught my girls to always be, and they have a collective of friends. My oldest daughter has an amazing relationship with my granddaughter's father. They've never stepped a foot in court or anything like that. They co-parent my granddaughter, and they're both married to other people.
Yeah.
And they've never had any arguments. I mean, they are living their best life, and they are there for my granddaughter.
Yeah.
And my granddaughter's a very kind soul. And that's how we all as a family, when we found out my granddaughter was on the way, my family, his family, we collectively said, this is what we're going to do as a community to ensure that my granddaughter, you know, is raised with amazing values and to be the best member of society as she grew. And that's exactly what she is doing. And she just turned 13 years old. And she started, you know, almost 4 years ago, she started a anti-bullying club in school because she saw a girl that was being bullied, and she confronted the bully. Believe it or not, the bully joined her club.
Good.
That's what you're supposed to do as a
bully
community.
For a reason, right?
Yeah, I mean, and come to find out, you know, now let's bring it, you know, why we're here, Veteran Trash Talk. Why we're here is veterans. Imagine being a child and one of your parents, and a lot of them, both of their parents are deployed.
Yeah.
Can you imagine the thought of these kids, and, you know, whether or not their parents were going to come home today or tomorrow?
Yeah.
Whether they were going to make it?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, and then who are they with when they're left behind? What are they going through when they're left behind? Do they feel abandoned? These, you know, our military kids are also suffering. And it's, you know, I used to think that a form of trauma was being physically beaten, you know, by your parent or, you know, your caretaker. I used to think that was trauma. And that's what I concentrated on myself, to make sure that my kids were never physically beaten or anything like that, because I thought that would keep them mentally safe, and I was wrong. And that's what I learned after I lost my daughter, was the difference between mental trauma and physical trauma is that we can't see the mental trauma, and we don't understand that. And that's what's so important about me and what I do, is I want to educate individuals to understand. I don't want you to look at the news. I don't want you, you know, to just take your child's words. I want, you know, our children go through very similar things. I mean, if you have a child that's quiet and all of a sudden they become agitated and they're constantly angry, and they're no longer that child that used to be kind and loving, and they're just full of anger. What happened? If that child is not being, you know, physically or mentally abused at home, what happened outside? Because I'm going to tell you, I can't tell you how many kids I have had come to me, and it's not the kids, it's the parent because their kid was sexually assaulted in school.
Yeah.
These are the things that the media is not picking up.
Yeah.
So
well, we had out here in Loudoun County, where the school board hid the sexual assault of that kid out here. Now that's under investigation, where the superintendent hid it, and they transferred the kid to another student, to another school, and he assaulted another kid.
And that's exactly it.
Kids, and I don't know what changed and why it's different. And I know some school districts are better than others. I get that, and I understand that. But it's just not the same environment it was when I grew up. I mean, because and Junior has been bullied, believe it or not, when he was younger, and he was a lot smaller. And I remember I talk about this in my speaking events in 8th grade. He was trying out for the wrestling team. These kids knew nothing about him because I just got custody of him from his mother, and his mother, and I've talked about this with you a lot, Linda, mentally abused that child. And it took me years to convince the court what was going on. 6 years I fought for a court to get him, because they always default to the mother being a better parent. And that's not always the case. And Junior was in therapy for a lot of years. So he came with me, he transferred to the school, and he wanted to try out for wrestling. He did Taekwondo for a lot of years. And so he's about 100 pounds. I mean, he's 160 now, but then he's 100 pounds. And so he's trying out for the wrestling team, and the not the heavyweight, but the weight down from it was walking up and slapping the smaller kids, and so he hit 2 kids before he got to Junior. Now, what do you think happened when he hit Junior? He walked up and hit Junior. Junior stepped back, hit him twice, and kicked him upside the head and knocked him out.
Right.
It was a natural reaction to fighting. For 8 years, Taekwondo, that kid hit him, and it was a natural reaction. Now, Junior and I are very close.
Right.
We talk a lot. It took him 2 days to tell me about this, because he felt bad because he hurt the kid, and it wasn't his intent. And I've always told Junior, and I tell Lloyd the same way, you have every right to defend yourself, right?
Absolutely.
But I had this talk with Junior. I said, kudos for you for standing up for yourself. I said, but what was going on with those other 2 kids who didn't stand up for themselves?
Right.
And then ultimately, what's going on with the kid that thought it was okay to walk around and slap? Because now I get it, wrestling is a physical sport, and he might have just been goofing off, because we do that. But I don't think he was, because you just don't hit somebody in the face. I mean, you can walk up and push him and toss him around on the wrestling mat and that kinds of things. But just to walk up and physically hit somebody in the face, that's a little bit different. Now, that bully learned a lesson that day? He sure did. You just don't walk up and slap somebody, because you might poke a hornet's nest.
Exactly. And see, if you take that right there, that example, Junior went through a lot. But because he had you, and because you were able to understand, and I'm going to say it was internal, because you yourself understand mental health and mental illness.
Yeah.
And you wanted to ensure that Junior was okay.
Yeah.
Take that kid. He was probably going through something similar, but the thing about it is he didn't have you. He didn't have a form of you to be able to try to help. And what he did was he came to school, and until he met Junior, he was probably bullying other kids.
Probably.
And that's kind of, what's going on with these kids. They're fending for themselves. They're, you being a mold, and you being there, and you helping Junior, and Junior being an amazing young man. Lloyd is in the footsteps of doing the exact same thing. And if you take how you and your household is, because both mom and dad are in the military. Yeah. And look what you're doing. You're balancing
right now. So we're separated again.
Exactly. And because of the military, you're separated. It's not like you're separated because you're having problems. You're separated because of your jobs.
Yeah.
So you're still raising and co-parenting your children. But see, that is what a lot of adults need to understand. Even if you have an issue with the other parent, it's the child that gets all that trauma. It's the child that suffers silently from what's going on. And they don't get that from your home at all. But see, other kids, it's probably not working like that. And even though me with Loren, I was the single parent, she didn't get that from me. Unfortunately, it was still a part of her life from her father and me doing what I could to protect her. But that was a good case in point right there. If Junior would not have come to you or thought he was comfortable enough to come to you, he would have kind of kept that to himself.
He would internalize.
It would have bothered him and would have started to really eat at him. And I think that's what Loren was kind of going through. She thought that she could handle it, not knowing that, mental illness would have ended up taking her over. And, I don't suffer from mental illness. However, you can confirm this for me. When depression, being the beast of a monster that it is, starts to take over your mind, that's all you hear. You don't hear anybody else. You don't hear anything else. All you hear is what that monster is telling you. And, I could be looking at you and saying, Cliff, I love you, whatever you're going through, I'm here for you. Come and talk to me. But realistically speaking, the monster in your head is truly delivering the message to you, and you're not hearing what I'm saying.
White noise.
And so what you're getting is, I don't care what you're going through, just, deal with it and get out of my way.
Yeah.
And these kids don't know that,
yeah.
And they suffer at such an early age. And, Loren started, suffering from, what her biological father was kind of putting us through, at the age of 5.
Yeah.
So when she died 10 years later, you're talking 10 years of trauma that she was dealing with. And no matter what, I mean, she wasn't angry to me, but when she complained of stomach aches, I took her to the doctor. When she had rashes, I took her to the doctor.
I think some of that thing she was having medically was caused by the stress that what she was internalizing was going through, and that's how it was manifesting in her.
That's exactly what it was, because mental illness can manifest in a physical form. So she started having stomach aches. So if you think about it, extreme anxiety.
Because I went through the same thing with Junior with his mom.
It was the same thing. The stomach aches, the headaches, falling asleep in class, or getting sleepy, and rashes, unexplained rashes. All of these physical manifestations is what I took Loren to the doctors for. But ultimately, when she died, I realized everything that she was going through. Yes, it was physical, but it was the mental developing into a physical.
Yeah.
And so even though I was taking her to the doctor, even the doctor themselves didn't understand that. I kept, she had one pediatrician. And if I took her to this one pediatrician, even that pediatrician then never once said, let's take her to a clinician. Let's take her to a psychologist to see if, everything that she's been going through, is playing a psychological role in these physical manifestations of her being ill. So, and that's why it's so important for me to share signs. Like number one, aggression. If a child becomes agitated in aggression, if they change from being kind and nice to absolutely
go elected kid or something.
Exactly. The number one thing that a lot of kids do is hopelessness. Dad, I don't, it's never going to change. I just give up. I don't care. The world will be a better place without me in it. Those are literal signs that these kids are suffering, So their body language. Loren she loved her Air Jordan sneaker collection. And, she went to school and she'd have one pair to walk around and trash in and another pair, to look good in. I don't know how she was an honor student and, walking around changing fashionably in shoes. But
my son's the same way. He still does the Jordan shoes. He restores them. He makes videos about it. And we've talked about this before.
That's how, right.
And it's just something that he's really into. And I just want to make a quick point, and I want you to go back through the steps again, Linda. is, for parents, find something that your child is really into and support that. I know nothing about shoes, but Junior has lived, eat, and breathe these shoes, and he's become an expert over the years. And I've just supported him on it because, I didn't understand it, but I had to support him as a parent because that's his outlet.
Yeah.
His outlet from the stress of school, the stress of sports, the stress of being around dad, the stress of mom being gone, whatever it is, that is his outlet and his safe place that allows him to decompress. And I think a lot of parents don't realize, they say children are resilient. Yeah, they are resilient, but they're still human beings. And everybody needs to decompress at some point.
They do. And we were children at one point, and we were resilient. But look at us, I mean, we all go through things, and, like you said, even with Loren was a sharpshooter. She did skeet and trap shooting. She had a bow and arrow. She had a recurve bow and arrow. So she did archery. She had a goal to be the youngest person to try out in the 2016 Olympics for either skeet shooting or archery.
Yeah.
So, and her sneakers. Loren had a lot going, that she was able to sustain, but the bullying on her sexuality is something that she just couldn't, she couldn't live past. And that was, the final breaking point for her. But, and speaking about, the signs, you have the agitation, you have the hopelessness, you have the decline in self-care where, Loren went from taking care of her Jordans, to just like not doing the 2 pairs of sneakers in school, even though when she passed, her Jordans were still in their boxes with their shoehorns and clean. So she just kind of stopped, instead of going to school looking like that, she just stopped carrying the 2nd pair of shoes. I just thought it was, teenage growing pains. She was changing. Through that. And then, of course, there's a decline in self-care, where Loren stopped taking her sneakers, the 2 pairs of sneakers. You have other kids who do it a different way. They may go to school looking nice and a nice shirt and nice slacks, or skirt, and doing hair. If it's a boy, they have their hair, done and shaped up, or if it's a female, they have their hair, cut or in a ponytail, and, just change that. They no longer truly care about that. And you're like, oh, well, why aren't you, dressing the way you used to? Oh, you know what? That's just too much work. That is a sign, they're changing. And, I mean, it's just all of these different things that these kids, are going through. And the number one thing is withdrawal. If you and your child are used to doing things like, every Friday going to the movies, or every Saturday, you did something. And then it became come on, let's go here. And then all you hear is, no, I'm tired. I just want to stay home. Or, if it's kids, if you're calling your friend and it's like, come on, yeah, hey, look, yes, Saturday, it's almost time. And then they start changing. Well, aren't you going to go hang out with your friends? This is an every Saturday thing that you do at 1 o'clock. No, I'm tired. I just kind of want to stay to myself. And if they start, staying up later at night and really kind of getting sleepy during the day, I mean, it's just that withdrawal is, it's subtle. And, I want parents to understand that these signs, look at your children's body language, learn to hear what they're saying through the physical form of what their bodies are saying. Don't wait for them to say, oh, mom, dad, I've been feeling kind of low, because they don't understand it. They truly don't understand what depression is, or, what they're physically going through. So it's important. You and I said this about our kids. With Loren, her safe space doesn't have to be a physical being in a room.
Right.
It was skeet and trap shooting. So me taking her to, to her skeet and trap shooting classes, or me taking her to her bow and arrow, her archery classes, or me taking her shopping to get her a new pair of Jordans. Her safe space were those items. And what I did not realize is little by little, that kind of, shortly before she died, she posted a picture of herself and said, I really miss skeet and trap shooting. I can't wait for this season to come up. And that told me she really didn't want to lie. She didn't really want to die.
Yeah.
But she was so sad internally that she couldn't see living anymore. And some of her friends who lived through the unknown suicide attempts that I didn't know that they were going through, they started to suffer from, survivor's guilt. And, it created major depressive disorders for them, or PTS. One of my daughter's very good friends, on February 15th, I got a phone call from her mother. My daughter's suicide is still causing a ripple effect on her friends.
Wow.
And this young lady, 9 years later, the day before, every year between January 26th and February, you and I are very close. Loren's birthday is January 26th.
Yeah, 2 days after.
The day that she died is February 16th. So I barely have 3 weeks where I understand my own mental capacity of dealing with the sadness that I'm faced with every year at that time. Those kids learned at a young age that Loren leaving, there are multiple of her friends. There's still about a handful, 2 or 3 of them that still cannot function between those 2 days. And, I want adults to understand that these children, yes, we can say that they are resilient as much as we want to believe that they are resilient, but I know to this very day, 9 years after losing my 15-year-old to suicide, that her friends are still suffering.
Yeah.
That her friends are still suicidal, where majority of them, 90% of them, have been able to develop a routine, to understand what they're going through, to be able to learn coping mechanisms to actually function through the trauma of what they were going through in their life, and then losing their friend on top of that to suicide. They've learned coping skills because of reaching out to me, being able to help them to understand what they're going through, to understand that it is okay to not be okay, to understand that their mind is bleeding because they need help, and develop skills that they will need to hone in on for the rest of their lives. Because even though as resilient children, when they get older, they're going to go through heartaches and car accidents and losing other friends and, having a job that they don't like, being in debt, having to take care of a home, having to take care of children, having to go through heartache. If we don't teach these very resilient children that life is only going to get harder,
right,
that is the reason why we as adults, we are now learning. And people, when I was younger, I used to hear people say, oh, such and such is going through midlife crisis. It's not a midlife crisis. It's just an adult who went through so much as a child and so much as an adult that when they became an adult, they got their breaking point. Loren reached hers at 15.
Yeah.
You have a lot of adults between 45 and 60 that reach their breaking points too.
Yeah. And as me being a suicide survivor, I truly understand what it's like to get to that breaking point, and getting to that moment, and realizing, you don't want to see the sunrise, you don't want to see the sunset, you can't see anything from the mountain that's in front of you.
That's
And
true.
it's very important for parents. One thing I talk with Junior about, with social media, it gets a lot of bad rap. I mean, there's a lot of bullying that goes on. And it's the simple old phrase that we've always heard growing up: sticks and stones may break my bones, but words and lies will never hurt me.
Yeah.
The problem is these words and lies hurt these kids because of social media. And I
Yeah.
tell Junior, and he's get bullied, and people say things about him because they're jealous, or what the fuck ever kids say nowadays to each other. I told Junior, I said, fucking delete them.
Exactly.
Why pander to their listening, or whatever they got going on in their life? Why pander to it? Freaking
Yeah.
delete it. I get enough hate mail and hate shit with what I do. I don't even freaking care. I don't listen to it. I don't pay attention to it. And I showed Junior it. I said, look, I get the same thing. I just don't, I ignore it. Because you know what? You can. And if they're a friend at
Exactly.
school, I told Junior this. If they're a friend at school and they're saying this shit to you on social media, go talk to them to their face and
Oh
see if
yeah.
they'll say it to your face. Because I guarantee you, they won't.
Oh
They
yeah.
won't
Oh
do it.
yeah. I
And
mean,
that kid
it's
that was
gonna
doing it,
happen.
he confronted him, and the shit stopped. Right. And so, and as Lloyd gets older, I'll say the same thing. So I just wanted to say that, to parents out there, pay attention to what your kids are doing on social media. If they're getting bullied, or if people are saying things to them that aren't nice, just explain to them, maybe why that person's doing it, or the reason behind it, but tell them that you have the ability to push delete.
Yes.
And you don't have to put up with it. And if it's a friend of yours at school, go talk to him and find out what's going on.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
with these school counselors out there, and going back to what we talked about in the beginning, I'm really glad, and it's very important that you're doing what you're doing in Maryland and other states. I know that other states have reached out to you to get these counselors that counseling needed, because they're going to need it.
Yes.
This year, going back full time with COVID, I just heard on the news today in Virginia that they're looking at a task force to look at the mental health issues and problems with kids returning to school from COVID. I was lucky enough that Lloyd went to a private school, so he continued to go to school throughout COVID. He didn't stop going to school, but
Right. Right.
Junior did. But Junior, he was apprehensive about going back to in school.
Yeah.
And not because he was scared of COVID. We don't care about that, but he was nervous because now he's got to learn how to be social again.
Right.
Right. So now you're antisocial, and now you got to learn how to be social again. And that was kind of stressful for him. And I was shocked by that. I never even would have thought about that. I'm like, yeah, go see your friends, hang out. But he's like, Dad, I don't want to go to school.
No, they've become so self-reliant. I mean, you're gonna laugh when I sit here and I say this, but I hear a lot on the news that there's a shortage of dogs, because during COVID, so many people went and got dogs. But believe it or not, what I'm hearing is, so the dogs, during COVID, they grew up being in a house with you. And now that, you have to go back to the office, now your dog suffers from severe separation anxiety.
Yeah.
So I don't want to demean dogs, because, I love dogs.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But what about our kids? I mean, if we can acknowledge, and this is what I don't understand, how people can't accept that. It's like, people can see that dogs suffer from separation anxiety because after COVID, they have to be separated from their loved one.
Right.
And kids, like I said, there are kids who are bullied in school that when they go virtual, they enjoy it and they thrive. So Junior, case in point, he's thriving through virtual learning. He doesn't mind school, but you have individuals that make school just a little bit uncomfortable for Junior.
Sure.
So he appreciated that he didn't have to go through that stress as far as in-class learning. And that's what, I truly want everybody to see. All of us adults, everyone needs to be able to see this. Our kids, they go through a lot of stress. We keep saying the word resilient. I don't want to say, I actually don't ever say resilient anymore. to any parent. I never say kids are resilient at all, but I can guarantee there are so many people, I hear that word all the time, and I'm like, children are not resilient, they are sponges.
Yeah.